Hello and welcome to another episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast, but it is not a normal episode, it is a special episode as we count down the top 50 board games of all time. And when we do that, we do it as objectively as we possibly can. I am joined today by Mark and Neilan.
Hello.
Hello.
And for the first time ever, the top 50 list of the most attractive tank amongst us.
Wait, I was here last year.
I have some unfortunate news to tell you, Neilan. I am only attracted to one of the tanks, and it is the blue tank.
Hello. That was a weird introduction, and I don't know what to say.
How do you feel being on the big top 50 episode?
I'm very nervous. It used to be fun making a top 50 list, and now it's very stressful.
We've sucked all the fun out of it.
Yeah, this is not fun.
Well, as Kellen mentioned, this is objective, so you didn't actually really have to even figure anything out. We just put them all in formulas.
Oh, good point.
What you've arrived at should be the truth either way. So
Yeah.
Yes. There was no decision making. This was all mathematically derived.
The end of year spectacular may be new to some of you, but we will be spending the next 5 episodes of the show counting down our 50 favorite board games. For those of you who've participated before, we will share how this has fallen, how a game has risen on our lists. We'll give you a succinct reason why we like it, and then other tanks will probably jump in and talk us for liking the games that we do. I already am preparing my speech for Mark's 10 through 1 as we speak. But before we get to our 50 to 41, Mark, Neilan, and I will share one game that has fallen off of our top 50 board games of all time this year, and Christina will share one game that almost made the cut. We do have to establish sort of the order in which we're going to go through this, for the whole shebang, for all 5 episodes. Is it like NKCM? What acronym works here so that we can just shout? Is it MNCK? Is it CKNM? Well, have I already said that one?
I don't know. There's good old alphabetical.
Ooh, that would be
CKMN.
But we learned last week that I don't know all the letters.
Right.
CK.
Neilan already said the whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh, he did it?
He did it.
CKMN. I like it. I love it, actually.
CK, that's also my initials, so
There you
it has
go.
a nice ring. to
Bonus.
it.
CKNM meaning Mark. Christina. I was
very confused.
Yeah, I was like, wait a second.
That's how we want to do it?
Yeah.
Alphabetical?
That's right.
Okay, that's fine. So a game that dropped from my list this year that made me very sad was Happy Salmon. So I think I can entirely blame this on COVID because I'm afraid to play Happy Salmon ever again with people shouting and slapping fins. So it's very sad, but it is an honorable mention because I still love this game.
I think there's something spectacular. You should rate it on Board Game Geek, like 1 out of 10, and then COVID-19 killed Happy Salmon. I think that's quite insightful.
Are you making fun of me?
No. I think this is really interesting.
That COVID killed Happy Salmon?
Yeah, that's real.
I mean, hopefully someday we can play Happy Salmon again.
No,
but
never.
Probably not in
I mean,
2021.
once it's been killed, it doesn't really come back. Sorry.
Is it? Is it me next?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
So that means it's Neilan.
One of the games that left my list and was coming in last year at number 41 is Piñata/Balloon Cup. This is a really good old school 2-player back and forth dueler type game that I enjoy a lot, but many 2-player games are already on this list, and I don't particularly enjoy 2-player games that much. So it's like when in doubt, I will go to innovation. When I won't go to innovation, I have 2 or 3 other games. Piñata and Balloon Cup was taking up a valuable spot that a newer game needed to take up. But I do adore both Piñata and Balloon Cup.
Just missing out for me, it was 37 last year, is Bruges by Stefan Feld. I think the biggest reason, aside from, I think, maybe not playing it since last year's list, is I played a lot of games, I think, this year that sort of do what Bruges does. A lot of cards giving you special powers sort of thing. And so I think it might pop back onto the list if I give it a couple more plays, and I know a new version of it is being released in the Queen Games City Collection, so it may reappear. But for right now, a lot of competition, a lot of the newer games that I played had the same sort of feel, so Bruges just missed.
Number 49 on my list last year was Air, Land, and Sea. I did not make it back onto the list this year. I actually played a fair bit of Air, Land, and Sea this year. It became my work break game. Like, I was playing with several coworkers, and I think I just played it out a little bit and kind of saw the limits of what the game offered. So yeah, I'm not feeling especially compelled to play a whole lot more of Air, Land, and Sea, but I had a lot of fun with it in 2020.
You forgot what year we're in, Neilan.
Yes.
As we all have. Still feels like March. I remember when I thought it'd be fun to work from home. It was like, ooh, goody. Take my monitor home and set it up on my kitchen
Right.
table. Like, this is weird.
Yeah. What a
And
fun
then,
little
wait a
thing
minute.
this is.
I haven't seen the kitchen table since then because all of the stuff is still on it.
It's like an episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah. All right. So let's kick it off. Here we go. The top 50 board games of all time, as dictated to you, the listener, by us, the Royal We, the Board Game Barrage podcast. We are going in order of CKMN, which is also alphabetical.
All right. That means Mark. Just kidding. Okay, so this is my first time doing this. I apologize for the blunders and the bumbling, but let's get right into it. My number 50 game is a little old game called Clank. So Clank is a light push your luck deck building adventure game, and it has a fun fantasy theme. It's like deep sea adventure, but with more going on. I love how simple this is as a deck builder. So it's kind of like in this game, there are a lot of fun things that you're adding to your deck, and you can't completely screw up your hand like in other deck builders. So it's kind of like a safe, friendly deck builder that just makes it a great, happy, fun, laughing experience. Similar to like a deep sea adventure. I love that risk reward of knowing and deciding when to keep pushing and when to turn back.
I love Clank. This was on my list 2 years ago. Sadly, it slipped off, but it's still a game I enjoy returning to. And like you said, Christina, I enjoyed every time I played, and it's very accessible for people that are on the edge of the hobby. Like, this is for people that I know that like board games but don't play a lot of them. I usually will throw in the Clank near the start of us playing games together because it's just got a lot going for it while introducing some cool new board game concepts to them, like deck building.
Yeah.
Perfect for children, of which Neilan has many.
Exactly.
So that is my number 50 game, Clank, and specifically the base game, the original Clank.
Oh, you don't like space?
I have never experienced space.
Neilan doesn't know the alphabet.
What?
Oh, no, it's
No,
me.
it's you, Kellen.
Damn it.
Was that on purpose?
No.
Really?
All right, my number 50 favorite board game of all time is new to the list this year, but it is not a new game, and that is Root by Libre Games. Root is a asymmetric coin game that is for Euro gamers. I've actually never played a coin game, which stands for counterinsurgency. But in Root, you are woodland animals, and you are playing asymmetric factions who are vying for control of the woodlands. I think that I had a very hard time including this on the list because I abhor the Vagabond, which is one of the base factions, and I would always prefer not to play with it. I have all of the content for this game. I really enjoy the Exiles and Partisan deck, which is a more gamey, more screw around, more going on in the system. I enjoy all the factions. I enjoy the artwork. I've had some great games of this online this year. Root is one that there are other asymmetric dudes on a map games that I like better, but I think that Root really works for a specific Euro-minded player, and I think you can also trick others into playing it because of how adorable it is. That is Root.
I like that Neilan has a lot of children that he has to introduce board games to, and Kellen just has people he has to trick into playing board games.
This is a game that I feel like I would like more if I played it more.
Yeah.
I've only played it a couple times, and it didn't get its hooks into me either time. I don't know what it is. I feel like based on the people who I know I have similar tastes to, I would like it. I like coin-style games, but for whatever reason, my 2 plays of it have not done it for me just yet.
It's funny also because I probably played more Root this year than I have in previous years because of the digital app coming out. And in some ways, it kind of just got me over the curve of feeling like I wanted to play every faction and into a point where I just wasn't loving the experience of playing Root. Take that with a grain of salt, obviously, because it's digital and asynchronous, so it's not like actually playing the game in person. But I think exploring the factions is part of the fun of Root, and there are still factions and expansions that I would like to try, but my want to do that has somewhat diminished.
Yeah, it's definitely a grower and not a shower for me, which is not the case with everyone else who loves it, but there's something about the entire production. Like, I love its place on my shelf. I would not get rid of it, and I'm eager for any new content that comes out within it. But it isn't the first one that I go to, so that's why it's coming in at number 50, the 50th best board game of all time, Root.
My number 50 was 43 last year. It's barely hanging on, and I'm happy it is because I don't think it's going to be on anybody else's list. This is Innovation. This is the Carl Chudyk multi-use card, splaying, hand management classic. I have played this game more this year than any year in the past. Part of it was part of the BGB tournament we had, which I think is ongoing. I am terrible at this game. I am terrible at this game, and yet this is a game, and I think this is a sign of a great game, is a game where I know I'm going to get hammered, and I do get hammered, and yet it drives me to want to play it more.
Mm-hmm. Do you get the feeling like as soon as you are beaten in a game, you just want to like do a rematch?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, yeah, because I feel that way every single time I lose. I'm just like, no, I can beat you. Let's just play again.
Right,
I know exactly what I did wrong. Yeah, no, I love that about it too.
And I feel like there's like a language to it, or there's like, in the same way sort of as chess, where if you get deep into chess, there are like principles and just like general courses of action you can take. Innovation, I'm a super novice at it in the same way I'm a novice at chess, but I can see with good players that they know what's coming and they know best practices and stuff like that. And it's something that instead of like making me less interested in playing it, in sort of the same way that I feel like with Agricola. Like Agricola, I play against people who stomp me, and for whatever reason, it makes me draw back from it. Instead with Innovation, it may be a function of the fact that it's a much faster playing game, and just the crazy combos are very interesting, but it makes me want to play it more. So that feels to me like a sign of a really, really good game. So my number 50 is Innovation.
My number 50 is a new entry for the year. I played this for the first time in 2020. It is Modern Art. This is a excellent, quite accessible, but quite compelling game of multiple styles of auctions. So you have auctions where everyone bids once. You have regular sort of going around the table auctions. Every time a new card comes up for auction, there will be a different type of auction that will determine how that card is going to be sold. And you're using your money to sort of determine how much do I think this is going to be worth at the end of the round. Because one of the cool twists in Modern Art is that you don't exactly know until you get to the end of the round how valuable cards are going to be. So there's a little bit of push your luck gambling, and that married with a very simple auction system that has a couple of different variations to it, I think makes this game really shine. It is also just a game that I think is brought a lot to you just by the people you play it with. I've had games of this where everyone's laughing and trying to push pieces of artwork despite nothing but the picture on them, and it brings something out in the people that play it more than any other simple strategic game I've seen of this type.
I was gutted that I could not include the only true and living Doctor's Modern Art. I think it's spectacular how, like you said, it can wax towards a very strategic experience, but it can also pivot into this discussion about the artwork and how you must buy my artwork and this is the best artwork. And for it to flex in that way is like kind of confusing. Not many games can do that, where the theme and the mechanisms married together in such an interesting way. This is very good.
That is my number 50 game, Modern Art.
My number 49 game of all time is The Great Friedman Friese's Fresh Fish. This is a mean tile-laying auction game. It is super tense, a super tight auction game where you are making really difficult decisions about whether you should reserve spaces or whether it's the right time to bid for something that nobody else might be interested in or able to grab. There are really interesting decisions around the timing of the auction. There are really interesting decisions around whether you should block somebody or reserve spaces for yourself. I just feel like this packs a lot, especially for how short it is.
Yep. I totally agree. This was, for me, the year of the Friedman Friese awakening for me, and this is the game that really started it off. I absolutely love this game. It's really, really tense, really tight, and it plays in 45 minutes to an hour. I love it.
I do feel like, Mark, it has been that year where, you like watched one movie with an actress in it,
right,
and now you're like, hey guys, have you heard of Scarlett Johansson?
Right.
And you're trying to get us
All right, and that is number 49, Fresh Fish.
My 49th best game of all time is Cursed Court. Cursed Court is hanging by a thread here at the end of my top 50, and that may be buoyed by the spectacular, may I say myself, Pokemon edition of Cursed Court that I have created using poker chips, real Pokemon cards, and 3D printed Pokeballs. Thank you, I was the first Klund. Cursed Court is a lesser-known filler game where you're using shared information to bid on expected outcomes on a board. So essentially, Christina and I know one little piece of information. Neilan and I, sitting to my right, know a little piece of information. And then Mark and Neilan know something. And then Christina and Neilan know something.
Wow, Neilan knows a lot.
Neilan knows everything, somehow.
And Neilan's actually sitting on the board in the middle of the table.
You evaluate bids and go, why is Mark bidding over there? Is Mark bidding over there because he's trying to get me? And usually I can actually now know Mark is just trying to get Kellen. Like whatever he can do to get Kellen. You may see 2 or 3 of one symbol and just know this is what I have to go all down in. And you're not bluffing at all, but no one believes you. And so there's sort of this escalation to each round as you kick people off. I think that this goes on for a little too long. If this was 2 rounds and the 2 rounds worked, this would be in my top 20 easily. Because it's 3 rounds long and you're relying on a little bit too much luck, I still think this is a spectacular experience. I still think people should seek out Cursed Court, but it's why it's riding here at 49th favorite board game of all time.
And that is why it will never be on my top 50 list.
You feel like it goes on too long?
Oh my gosh, yes. This game would be fun if it was 1 round. I just by the second round, I'm bored. I get it. I get it for the first round. And then I just...
Seems like you don't.
I think the best part about this game is the Pokemon. So I'll just leave it at that.
Cursed Court was close to making my list too. I love that it's just a little bit of bluffing, a little bit of speculation. It's just a good combination of stuff that is using poker hands as sort of like the mechanic is also a little bit more familiar in some ways. It's kind of got the look of like a gambling table, but with this bizarre medieval theme.
That is my number 49th favorite game of all time, Cursed Court.
My number 49 has been dropping steadily. It was 27 in 2018, 40 last year, and now it's 49. The Doctor makes his second appearance on the list with Blue Lagoon.
Oh, could we do like a Dr. Bell or something?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The doctor's going to show up a lot.
Is there like a hospital sound?
Oh, yeah. Let's do that.
Not good?
Yeah.
What, like a heart rate dropping?
Yeah, like the Half-Life Dead player sound.
All right, you got it. I'll do that.
No. Don't actually do the dying person
Well, we
sound.
can do a hospital sound.
Yeah.
Wait, what's a hospital?
What is a hospital?
Wait,
sound?
what if it was...
What about paramedic sound?
Exactly. Like an ambulance sound. Like, here's
Yeah.
the doctor's coming. Yeah.
Who's that?
The doctor's coming.
Oh, okay. So Blue Lagoon, I believe it was Board Game Barrage's game of 2018. Am I right about that?
Yep.
I think I'm right about that.
All right.
So it's got the pedigree right there. So Blue Lagoon is a abstract chaining set collection game that has a little bit of the feel of his other game, Through the Desert, but with a little bit more Euro with the whole set collection and scoring points in that way. Another aspect I like about it is the 2 phases that it's got, where you have one phase where you're scoring at the end of the phase. So the phase matters. It's not just a setup phase, but you have one phase and then that building off of that phase in the second phase, which is its own sort of game. So you're playing the game basically twice, but the way you play the first half influences in an interesting way the way that the second one progresses.
One thing I know about Mark is he loves games where the first phase is very important to the second phase.
I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea what you're talking about. I think the biggest reason for Blue Lagoon being on my list, and one of my favorite aspects of it, is the same thing you see in Through the Desert, where, you know, you need to get to like a spot. Like you're desperate to get to this island because it's the last island that you haven't touched, and you need to get to it, and you see like Christina has a marker in the area, and if she starts moving that way, you know, it's going to be trouble for you. And so you place one marker and you just, Neilan's playing next, but all you're watching is where is Christina going to place her next marker, because it's such a game where tempo is such a huge thing. And I love games where tempo matters. And that's why I love Blue Lagoon. And it's super cheap. Like it's like $15, $20. And I just think it packs a lot of punch. And I think it's relatively simple to teach, especially for anybody who's played a hobby board game. The Euro aspect is quite simple, and, the chaining aspect is pretty straightforward. So
this is also BG Bob's best filler game.
That's right, among there, yeah. Exactly. So that's more pedigree. So that's my number 49 best board game of all time, Blue Lagoon.
My 49th best game of all time fell quite a few places, fell 8 places, almost slipping off the list. But I really wanted to keep it on because it's such like an odd, quirky little game. This is Sol Last Days of a Star. You have a mothership in Sol that is slowly orbiting the sun, from which you launch these little spaceships, and you're using those to create patterns which you construct stations, which give you points when other players utilize them, but all of your stations stay static compared to your mothership as it continues to drift around. It becomes more of like this weird like spatial puzzle. It's an extremely weird game that's kind of hard to explain, even when you're playing it, even when you're seeing it for the first time. It's hard to internalize exactly how it works and what you're supposed to do. But the reason I love it is it's so evocative of its weird little theme of taking all these little spaceships and trying to launch them into the sun to get this energy before the sun explodes. Because there's almost like this unknown time factor in the game when you don't know quite when it's going to end. So you're just trying to maximize your points at just the right time. It's also just a beautiful looking production. It's one I want to play more of, but it's just slipped from lack of playing, mostly, to be honest.
Despite stealing its motif from Sunshine, the greatest movie of all time, what I think is so funny about Soul is like you make a building, you're excited that you've made a building, and then one turn later you realize, oh crap, like I am floating away from this building and it's not, and then you try to calculate, when am I going to come back around? And you're like doing the circle in your mind, and then you actually can't figure it out. And then 4 turns later, you're like, nope, I'll never be able to use that building.
Right.
Which is weird. It just feels weird. And I think that's what you're trying to capture. What a unique game. Soul.
Absolutely. That's my number 49, Sol Last Days of a Star.
My 48th best game of all time is Diamant, also known as Incan Gold. So this is probably the most straightforward push your luck game. And one of the things I like about this is that you can play this with up to 8 players. So this is basically a party game. This is like the push your luck party game that's not completely party.
Episode number 30. Party.
Yes, thank you, Kellen. You can refer back to that. I previously had both Deep Sea Adventure and Incan Gold on my list, and I kind of feel like I only have space for one of them now, and if I'm only keeping one of them in my collection, it's going to be Diamant, Incan Gold, and I think it is because it is more of like, that has that party feel, and you can play it with a bunch of people, and
Japan hates you.
Yeah, it's also, what?
Japan hates you.
Thank you. It's also has a really fun element of you have to judge what other players are going to do and when they might leave so that you can get the most treasure. It's a whole lot of fun every single time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like pure press your luck, but I love the moments where there's like 2 or 3 people left in the mine or in the tunnel, and one of the artifacts has come out, and so the artifacts are only given if one person leaves the tunnel, and there's sort of like a brinksmanship between the people remaining, like, wait, are you going to leave now? Or am I going to leave? Like, which one is going? Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
It's also like, it captures the stress because you're agitated, you're amped up because you want that thing. And
Right.
so like that argument gets really, really heated.
Sure.
And so it feels like sometimes press your luck, it's like in Can't Stop, the press your luck is like perfunctory. Like this, it's like that moment is a big reveal moment where you scream at someone else. Like very directly what they do impacts you, which I think is just great.
And the rounds go so fast that like when you have that card flip, when there's like 2 or 3 people left, the rest of the table is still engaged because it's like a big like flip. Oh,
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
It's entertaining even if you're not in it anymore. Yeah.
And even at the full player count, like because it's all simultaneous, it still just breezes by. It's great.
That is my 48th best game of all time, Diamant/Incan Gold.
That just missed my top 50 this year, leaving the collection.
But luckily not leaving the collection because it's in my collection, which happens to also be his collection. So it kind of works out.
Actually. All right, my number 48th favorite board game of all time is the classic card game Wizard. I want to be very clear here for those listening that this is not Skull King. It is anything but the excess of Skull King. It is the beautiful simplicity of Wizard. In Wizard, you are playing a series of trick-taking hands that start with 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, and then you work your way down. I think if you play with the game as written, it runs a little long because you kind of do too many hands, and so we usually skip through the hands. But we use a very important variant where people are bidding on how many tricks they think they can win, except the number cannot equal the amount of tricks. So in a 4-card round, Mark, Neilan, Christina, and I could not all bid 1 because that would be easy. We would all be trying to have that objective happen. So the last person who bids gets stuck having to either bid 0 or having to bid more than 1, which allows for the gamesmanship of sort of trying to screw with each other. This is a very interactive, trick-taking card game. I have, once again, a spectacular Pokemon card set of this that made a wonderful gift for 2 of my siblings. As we've established, I'm the best gift giver that the show has. Wizard is so good. I think it should be higher on my list. I'm mad at myself right now. That is my 48th favorite game of all time, Wizard.
My number 48 is new to my list, but not a new game. It's one that I was trying to play for a long time until we all got a chance to play it together this year. This is Chaos in the Old World. Chaos in the Old World is a area control, heavily asymmetric game and a predecessor of Cthulhu Wars and Blood Rage and all those kind of games. It's just asymmetry and area control at its best. That's sort of like the crux of the game. You are going around, you're sending your minions out, fighting over control of land. I would say fans of asymmetric area control games along the lines of Cthulhu Wars and the like, this is a game I would highly recommend. Doesn't take too long to play, and each faction feels really, really different than the other. It's very much out of print and very much hard to find, so certainly not something I would tell anyone to go out and buy, but definitely if you're into that type of game, it's one to definitely seek out. I'd never played it, and I'm glad that I finally got around to it. So
I feel similarly, and I'll be talking more about it later. But not today.
There you go.
I think there's such a good meme potential for someone who's played Cthulhu Wars and then is learning the rules for this, where like it just slowly zooms in on their eye as they realize like it's 60% the exact same thing.
Right,
And
yeah.
just like the sudden realization of that. What a great game.
Yep, that's my number 48, Chaos in the Old World.
My number 48 game is a game that I was surprised wasn't on my list last year, and I'm trying to rack my memory of 2019, Neilan, to figure out why that is, but it's Eternal Chronicles of the Throne, a game I really enjoyed quite a lot right out of the gate. This is a 2-player, primarily, that's how I would prefer to play it, dueling card game in the vein of something like Direwolf's Eternal or Magic the Gathering, where you're summoning creatures, you're setting them to attack the other player. That player is also summoning creatures that they can block, and there's this constant decision of, well, if I block this turn, then I won't be able to attack on my next turn, so how do I best utilize the creatures I'm using? The core twist on this is that this is not a deck construction game, it's a deck building game, so you are creating your deck over the course of playing it. You have a card market where you acquire cards to add to your deck, and it plays much like those styles of deck builders. You're cycling through your deck multiple times. The same creatures keep coming out to attack the other player. And it's about finding the right combinations of cards that are going to work effectively in your tableau to reduce your opponent's hit points to 0. I have had a lot of fun with this at the beginning of this year, especially. This is another game I was playing a lot during lunch at work at the beginning of the year with people who are big fans of Magic the Gathering. And I think it has been a big success in that crowd. I mean, I used to play a lot of Magic the Gathering myself, and this just feels like it scratches the itch without me having to spend a lot of money and time creating decks of cards. That is Eternal Chronicles of the Throne.
I remember playing this at Gen Con last year. I only got a chance to play it, I think, at the airport as we were leaving, so just the one play. And I remember really liking it. So I'm really glad that you, after continued plays, your estimation for it has only grown. That's cool.
All right. My number... You looked at here to say something.
I was just going to say C, K, M, N.
Thank
C,
you for reminding me.
K, M,
N.
C, K.
Okay.
Okay. My 47th best game of all time is a game we all know and love. We've played many times together. It is a party game called Decrypto. Decrypto is
It's a word game, not a party game.
Is a word party game.
What kind of party do you go to?
Where you are giving your teammates clues and trying to prevent the other team from guessing what your words are based on those same clues. So this is such a fun game that really kind of forces you to be super creative in a way that some other word games cut you more slack. Other games cut you more slack. This one is, you really have to be thinking hard. This is not an easy breezy word game, fun party game. Actually, it's intense because you want to win and you don't want to take too long coming up with and actually there's a timer, so you can't take too long coming up with your clues. And we always just have so much fun with this. You end up using fun inside jokes, but not too inside because that's against the rules.
I love Decrypto. I will definitely be talking about it more later. To me, it's the game that I feel like is catching up on Codenames in my mind as the word game that I want to play more than any other. But you're right, Christina. It's so tense because you feel like you're a moment away from just giving the whole game away.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you give points to the other team and you lose. So it just feels like you're always on the knife's edge of just like, what is the appropriate amount to say without completely ruining this?
Right. And then there will be times when you think you have the perfect clues and then your team doesn't get it. And there's just like this anguish that sets in because you just can't believe that they wouldn't get it. And you were so excited. So there are just a lot of high highs in this game.
I think I will just say once again that this party has anguish, knives, and intense wordplay. What a party.
Thank you. We have very fun parties at my house. And that is my 47th favorite game of all time, Decrypto.
My 47th favorite board game of all time is the Eric Lang modern classic, Blood Rage. Blood Rage takes asymmetry. It's a people on a plane board game where you are building your faction as you go, as opposed to the Cthulhu Wars, the Roots of the World, where your asymmetry is built in. This allows you to draft and upgrade your powers, which in a way gives you a different type of variety. You can pursue multiple different strategies each game. You can use hate drafting. I think that it takes essentially a Seven Wonders style draft and then converts that into fighting on a board. I enjoy it every time. My downfall is always trying to upgrade my civilization. I have more fun making them cooler instead of winning the game and scoring points. It's like, why would I take an objective when I could get stronger in the water with this Kraken for my people? Blood Rage is just great.
Yeah, I love this game so much. All of my memories of playing this game are like the most stressed out I've ever been, where like I have to stand up and pace because I'm so stressed out. And those are usually my favorite games. It's a long game that hurts your brain, but in the best way. And you'll be hearing more about it from me later.
And then Mark flips over a card and wins the game. I'm never going to forgive you, Mark. Lost and only time I'll ever play Blood Rage.
At least I end on a win.
Are you implying that Neilan only ends on loses?
Oh, I don't really care if he ends on losses. I just care I end on wins.
Are you also implying that you'll never play this game again either?
It just missed my list. It was
really?
Close to my list, yeah.
And that is Blood Rage, my 47th favorite board game of all time.
My 47th favorite board game of all time. Well, you can't really pace. I was going to say induces pacing, but you can't really pace on this because you are both guessing what people are drawing and drawing simultaneously. This
no.
is Pictomania. I love this game.
Mark.
You hate this game? Not a big fan?
Yeah, this is not the right type of stress.
Okay, well, it's the right type of stress for me. So Pictomania is a game where you are both drawing things to make people guess what you're drawing, as you would in any sort of regular Pictionary sort of game, but you're also simultaneously guessing what other people are drawing. And there's a timing element where if you're the first person to guess, you could potentially score more points, but you could potentially lose more points if you guess incorrectly. It's a Pictionary style game, just chock full of tension. Like, imagine Pictionary, imagine how much tension you think you could cram into it, and then add 20% more. That is Pictomania. Absolutely love this game.
You just made me realize that I think this is people who are bad at multitasking maybe are bad at this game. So like me and Kellen.
The downfall, why don't I put it a little more eloquently, is that I have dedication to my craft, which is the drawing. Right. And in this game, you're not allowed to dedicate to that craft. So it doesn't respect art or the creative process.
Right.
Because you have to do two things at once. Ergo.
The thing is, if you're a craftsman to the level of Kellen, then maybe this game isn't for you. But I think that's such a small percentage of the population. And so
Thank you for saying that, Mark.
Yeah, I'm appealing to the larger hoi polloi, like just the general populace. But yeah, if you're a craftsman like Michelangelo, Kellen, then maybe this isn't for you. That's a fair criticism.
I know we're making fun of Kellen, but I actually think he's getting to the heart of what some people don't like about this game, is that it is super, super painful to be like, your brain can't handle it, to be trying so hard to focus on one thing.
Right.
And then also being like pulled away. It's like what I would imagine it feels like when you like, I don't know, have two babies and one of them is crying in one room and then the other one is crying in another room, and you're just like, both cries are horrible to listen to, but you can't like decide which one to focus on.
Right.
Why
you can't
are
put them
you
in the
keeping
same
your
room.
babies in separate
no,
rooms?
you can't keep them in the same room.
You can't.
They'll kill each
You're
other.
not
They'll
allowed.
kill each other.
They hate each other.
They'll tear each other limb from limb. Believe me. Do not do that. That's a public service announcement.
You're not wrong, Christina, but
You're
like
not right.
Mark, I love the stress in Pictomania. It's so good to me, and we will be talking about Pictomania many episodes from now. I love Pictomania.
Many episodes from now.
Look at that.
Ooh.
And also, just let the record show that Neilan agrees with the whole baby thing, and he has a lot of experience. So
Exactly. I keep
Wait,
all
so
my
you-
babies in separate states.
Oh, no.
and that is my number 47th favorite game of all time, Pictomania.
My number 47 game is a new entry for the list and a new game for 2020. At least its American release was earlier this year. This is Nova Luna. I spoke about this during our best surprise. I think that the brilliance of Nova Luna is taking a very simple puzzle game and matching it with a mechanic from one of my favorite games, Patchwork, which is this time system. So this idea that any tile you take, which is going to be contributing to your overall puzzle, has a certain amount of time associated with it, and you move your little player marker further down the time track. The next person in player order is whoever is the furthest behind in the time track. So you are paying in turn order to take any piece. So it's this constant consideration of, do I want to snipe a couple of tiles very quickly that are low in time? Or am I going to take this valuable tile that I might not get to go for the next few turns? All of this service of a puzzle game that is ultimately a race game. You're just trying to fulfill 12 little mini objectives on your tile grid, and as soon as you've done that, you've won. So it's a very simple rule set that is quite fun. I was very pleasantly surprised by Nova Luna, and I'm always itching to play a game of it.
This very sadly just missed my list. This was one of the painful ones where I kept like switching it with others, and then in the end it didn't make it. But I really, really love this game.
For me, Nova Luna will always be the surprise game for me of Dice Tower West when we went. I hadn't even heard of it when we broke it out and wasn't overly amazed, by the components or anything. And then we started playing it and I was like, wow, this is a really, really good game.
I think that the shared cursor of what pieces you can choose is a great way to inject interaction that doesn't make Care Bears upset. That great compromise of, oh, this is interactive, but also like you're not just screwing someone. It's indirect in the best way possible, which I think Uwe has repeated in New York Zoo and other games that he has.
That is my number 47 game, Nova Luna.
My 46th favorite game of all time is a game where you learn what your friends really think about you. And it is a game where at the end of the night, you will either be closer than you've ever been with these people or you will never speak again. It can go either way. It has gone both ways. This is True Colors.
I love it.
It's a drama.
Yeah, no, this game is, I think people would say, is hardly a game. It is an activity, but it's a very, very fulfilling activity. And we always end up with really shocking revelations, but also just like, usually it's just a hilarious, fun, good time where you honestly really are getting closer with other people. I have not played a game that delivers that type of experience in the way that True Colors does.
I couldn't agree with you more. Like, this is a dangerous game in a couple of ways. One, because pretty much everybody you play with at any one session has to be somebody you're comfortable with and somebody who knows everybody else, because even one or two people who are new to the group can make it sort of strange. And the other thing is, like, you know, if you're playing it right / honestly, it can cause a friction there too. But we had our little Barrage Con a couple years ago, and our like post midnight game of True Colors, where I think if memory serves, like Neilan and Kellen were both arguing why they should be the tech guy, the people that people go to for tech issues. It was just like one of the highlights of, you know, not only the con but like that year for me. It was just such a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
Everything about that night, I think, will be like indelible in my memory forever. Like, and it was all because of True Colors. Like, all of just us gathered around the couches. God, what a great night.
People quit. People went to bed.
People went to bed. Just like the outrage too at like discovering what other people think of you. I mean, we can't repeat some of them, but okay, just bleep all this so we can all laugh about it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
That is my 46th favorite game of all time, True Colors.
My 46th favorite game of all time is Detective Club. Detective Club is the lowest barrier entry to the genre of games that is, someone doesn't know what's going on at this table, and we're all going to giggle about who that someone may be. Detective Club does it brilliantly with Dixit-style cards, beautiful illustrations. I have had so much success with Detective Club with non-gamers and gamers alike. You will be trying to match a word that someone gives you using the cards that you have in your hand. And then once you flip them over, you have to tell a story as to why your cards relate to that thing. The giggles, the emotional laughter as someone flips a card when they know they've been caught because their thing has nothing to do with what we're talking about, or as they try to relate why their fiery hell is, you know, angelic, and they say it with gusto. What Detective Club feels like is Mark trying to sell you on why Biblios is a bird game for 2 years in a row. That is when Detective Club is at its best. Just a really accessible, great, beautiful board game.
First of all, easy sale. Second of all, while Detective Club isn't one of my favorite games, the moments where the person who doesn't know the word is able to sell you on his picture are some of the best moments in gaming. Like,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember me being...
Oh, is this the Dead Children one?
Yes, yeah. That's all the listeners need to know.
No, that's real.
Yeah.
What?
I don't remember this.
I just remember the thrill of getting away with it. And so, yeah, those moments are fantastic.
That is Detective Club, my 46th favorite game.
My 46th favorite game of all time is a game that you can watch Kellen and I play right now on YouTube on Board Game Geek's Game Night channel. This is Friedman Friesa's Fast Sloths.
Double crossover.
Oh, double crossover.
This is actually my 45th, but very close.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so you get in on this. So, yes, this is part of my year of the Friesa. Fast Sloths is a pick up and deliver game where you are the object being picked up and delivered by, among other animals, sloths. No, you are the sloth.
No, you are the sloth, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I got my animals confused.
You're being picked up by eagles, elephants, ants.
Even a human.
Even
a human.
Even
potential.
human?
Yeah, human is a potential animal in the game.
That.
Yeah. So, like Friesa's other games, like some of my favorite games in general, this is a very, very simple rule set. but with a lot of like interesting decisions to make. I love how simple the game is. I love it's like draw some cards, play cards, next player, draw cards, play cards, next player. And the cards aren't like very elaborate cards. They just have the animal that you want to manipulate and a number of power points that you can use to manipulate them. Or movement points. Movement points, I guess, is a better term. But super cute, super easy to teach, super fun to play. Just absolutely love it.
Yeah, super light, but I love how much potential there is for blocking each other.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like this happens a lot in our games. And again, this is partly just the way we play, but I'll notice that Kellen really needs another elephant card. And the best possible thing that I can do is take the card he needs and then take the elephant away from him so that he can't even access it. Like, those are some of the best moments in the game for me because people get really mad. And, you know, if you could advance your own game while you're also punishing other people, there's nothing better.
That's the way to do it, for sure.
I am gutted that this didn't find room on my list. It's right off the bottom. Like, I was moving it back and forth onto that number and 50 spot a couple of times. I love Fast Sloths. Also one of the games that I was most pleasantly surprised of in this year.
If it could fit into a stocking, I would put it on my list.
Okay, Mark. At the same time, you say, and that is my number 46, and I'll say, and that is my number 45, best game of all time.
Okay.
Ready?
3, 2, 1. And that is my number 46
45,
favorite game of all time.
Favorite game of all
Fast Sloths.
Fast Sloths.
The magic of post.
That went very well.
Yes.
My number 46th best game of all time has actually moved up 2 spots to Kellen's delight, I'm sure. This is Innovation. This is a game
Wait, it's on the list again? I was surprised. I thought my inclusion was going to be the other one.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry, Mark. I forgot to mention. Yeah. It will actually be on at least one other person's list. So, yeah, it's here on mine at 46. Innovation, I've, again, played this more probably this year than I have in any prior years because of how good the Board Game Arena implementation is. This is a game that is equal parts brilliant, unique, and, like, so frustrating. But I can't think of a game that I have so much deliberation and so much tension and so much feeling of just, like, oh, what is the right thing to do here without feeling it's all just going to crumble underneath me? Because inevitably it will crumble out from underneath you because the game is all about, you know, finding a weakness, exploiting it as much as you can, and then watching someone pull the rug out from under you on the next following turn and being able to pivot to your next weapon against them effectively. It's a game that surprises me every time because there are just so many cards in the system that you're not likely to see all of them in even a few games of this, especially the ones at the higher ages. That sort of beautiful choice of whether you want to build out your tableau or just use the weapons you have at your disposal is, I just find, incredible. That is Innovation.
I had high hopes that this would have made a bigger jump for you, Neilan, based on Board Game Arena, and I will, after every subsequent entry that you give, ask and compare it to how is this and how again is this better than Innovation, and you will struggle.
I could actually speak to that a little bit because I think actually it kind of goes back to the first thing I said, right? Which is I had games of this that made me feel like this game is brilliant. I love this. And then I had games of that made me want to burn the box, frankly. Like, I think there are moments where Innovation like completely just like obliterates my soul and I never want to play it again. But then I'm always just like a little bit itching more for it. So it's kind of a weird one for me. I love it as much as I hate it, but I think I love it a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's this low on both of your lists, actually. I mean, I guess Mark explained why, but Neilan, I don't understand, even though you tried to explain it right now. Also, I just realized one of my life pet peeves is when people, and this has nothing to do with me, this is like, it's my pet peeve for somebody else. Like when somebody gets a brand new book and they read the end. I had a friend in high school who she would just like go to Barnes & Noble and read the ends of books. Pet peeve. I don't want that for anybody, you know? Another one of my life pet peeves is specifically for Innovation. People who buy the game and then just like read all the cards, all the powers. You're ruining your life. Don't do that. Like, this is a game that can bring so much joy because, like Neilan said, you'll be playing your 100th game and you're still seeing a card you've never seen before. Right. So don't do either of those two things and you'll have a happy life.
That is Innovation, my number 46.
My 45th game we've already covered, and it is Fast Sloths and Popcorn Kellen.
My 45th favorite board game of all time is a rock-solid Uwe Rosenberg game. This is a new entry for me, one that I keep coming back to. This is Nusfjord, one that I don't know how to spell or pronounce. I love tight worker placement games that don't just add on systems upon systems upon systems. Nusfjord is Uwe Rosenberg refined. There is tight worker placement. There is cool powers that you're trying to take advantage of. There is variety in the different buildings that are available for you to buy. And all of that comes in a game that does not take more than 90 minutes. I cannot think of a game that I consider more solid. Mark occasionally throws the word solid around, and it just sticks to me that Nusfjord is solid. Solid as a rock. Nusfjord, one of my favorite board games of all time.
I think this one would have made my list if I'd played it a couple more times this year. I have had really good experiences, but I just need to play it more.
Yeah, actually, I'm the same boat with Christina. I really liked my couple plays of it and could definitely see this on my list in the future.
That is my number 45th favorite game, Nusfjord.
My number 45th favorite game is another high-tension party game, the sort of party game that I like, and that is Anomia.
Woo!
Anomia is a game where you everybody has a stack of cards, you flip them, and if the symbol on your card matches the symbol on anybody else's face-up card, then you have to name something that matches the category on that person's card. So if we're flipping, and I reveal a diamond, and then I realize after I flip the diamond that Neilan has a diamond showing, and my card says world capitals, and Neilan's card says types of dogs, and I say Labrador before Neilan says Washington, D.C., then I take Neilan's card. And then when I take Neilan's card, if that reveals another match at the table, like if that now shows a square and Kellen happens to have a square, that can cascade another screaming match between the two of them. This is super, super high tension. This is a game that I know is not for everybody, but some of my favorite moments at, I guess, board game parties specifically have come from games of Anomia. I guess Anomia is a term for that when you're trying to utter a word and you just say and that sort of thing, and that happens all the time in Anomia. It's just a fantastic
that's
high
literally the
stress party
game. Probably the best titled game of all games.
There you go. Perfect.
You know?
Well, second.
What about the game?
Oh yeah, you got me there.
Anomia fell off of my list this year. It was, I think, quite close to the bottom on last year's list, and I'm sad about this because I like to champion Anomia as a game on BGG that has a shockingly low rating for how good it is, but know that it's just hovering near the bottom of my top 50 list.
This would make another great Office-like moment where someone says to the camera, "I don't like party games." And then the next scene is Mark and Christina like standing up, screaming at each other back and forth, just saying stuff. And then it zooms in on the eyes of the person who said they didn't like party games, who can't even say anything and can't do anything and just feels bad the whole time. If you want a party game that makes you feel bad, play Anomia.
Well, play Anomia with us specifically.
Specifically me and Mark. Yeah.
That's right, exactly. So that is a new entry to my list, but an old game, my number 45, Anomia.
Good choice.
My number 45 game is a new entry for the list because I played a couple of games of it this year after having only played it once, I think, on the year of its release. This is Gùgōng, and it is probably the medium weight Euro that I most want to play more of in 2021, especially because I want to share it with, I think I played this with Mark before, but I would love to share it with Kellen and Christina because I think it has such a smart system driving the actions, which is one of sort of hand management card climbing. So you have to play a card higher than the previous player to activate an action. So if they played a 4 on this action on the previous turn, you have to play a 5 or higher. So there's a little bit of that trick taking sort of hand management around where you're going to use your cards in a given round in order to execute the Euro actions you want to do. And all of those actions are little discrete mini games around the board. One might be to move yourself around this map, collecting bonuses. There's a little boat game where you're sort of trying to overtake other people. And one of my favorite little mini games in this is probably the most crucial, which is something I always like in a Euro game. If you do not get to the top of the stairs to the palace, you cannot win the game. There's no other benefit to that action. You just have to do it. So there's this beautiful tension of when is the right time to do this? Am I going to have enough time with the cards I have to do this before the end of the game? Or do I just have to commit to doing it earlier? It's also just breezy. It plays in under 90 minutes and it looks beautiful. It's such a bright, vibrant, colorful game. That is Gùgōng.
That sounds awesome. And speaking of trick-taking and card climbing, my 44th favorite game of all time is Krass Kariert, or as it is known in America, I guess, Delt.
Or as it's known in Japan, Scout.
Well, we have the Krass Kariert version. Scout is a different game. And we have all had a ton of fun with this game. This is a, like I said, trick-taking, card-climbing game where you cannot change the order of your cards. So when you pick up your cards, whatever order they're in, that's the order you get. And you have to make different combos, basically, by playing the right cards at the right time so that your hand works out and you win the round. And the probably most fun things about this game, in my opinion, is that every player has a certain amount of lives, and once they have lost those lives, they lose. So there's one loser in this game and everybody else wins. So what ends up happening is once somebody loses one of their lives, everybody else sort of gangs up on that player, and we're all working together to try to make sure they lose their other life, and it just becomes a very funny...
Actually, could I just say that it's not whomever they try to gang up on. It's literally always Kellen. It's like, can we gang up against Kellen? And how can we make this happen in the best way possible?
Don't lose your lives. Get good.
You'll be hearing more about this later from me. A spectacular card game. Cannot agree with you more. Shocked this is not more recognized.
And that is Krass Kariert, my 44th favorite game of all time.
And if you want to seek out that game, it's called Delt in America. My number 44 favorite board game of all time is new to this list. This is a smooth-playing, absolutely beautiful economic board game that we had the opportunity to play. This is Smartphone Inc. Smartphone Inc. is a highly competitive game, and I will say that this works better at the higher player counts versus the lower player counts, where you are actually being Apple and Android and doing your best to make cell phones and sell them to the world. It uses a really interesting method of allowing you to do actions where you're rearranging grids of little smartphones and flipping over the tiles. It's a very silly way to choose your actions, but then after that, it's a very smooth price your smartphones. Try to undercut your competition. Try to expand out to different places that they can't get to. Try to innovate and come up with new technologies that they won't have access to. I think that I am afraid of heavy economic games, but I love when they take them and make them a little more Euro, pull them towards the mass market. This has recessed player boards, beautiful white artwork. I love everything about the theme. Smartphone Inc. blew me away this year, and one that I want to play more and more and have a bunch of Kickstarter content that I'm excited to get to.
This just missed my list. This was 54 for me. Just missed that. I really enjoyed the game. Only played it a couple times, but at different counts. And for me, even at lower counts, it was fun. Very much looking forward to playing it more in the coming year.
Yeah, this is definitely a COVID. I would have played this much more this year had I had the opportunity. That is Smartphone Inc., my 44th favorite board game.
My 44th favorite board game of all time is a re-entry to the list. It was 50th in 2018. It was off the list last year, and it is a return with a vengeance. This is Dungeon Fighter. Dungeon Fighter is a cooperative, Kellen is rolling his eyes, cooperative dice chucking game where you are all entering a dungeon. You're trying to fight your way to the big boss. And the way you do this, the way you encounter enemies, is you have to bounce a die off the table onto a target board in the center of the table. And the closer you get to the bullseye, the more damage you do. Furthermore, when you bounce these die, if the die face has like a special symbol on it, you can activate a special power. I have had some of the highest highs in board gaming ever, unquestionably, playing this game. And just add to the silliness before I get into that, you can buy weapons, you can buy swords and stuff like that to make you stronger. The way this is implemented in the physical space is that you may have to like roll the dice off your nose, or you may have to throw the dice using somebody else's hand with you controlling it, or with your offhand or under your leg or whatever. So it's just silly fun. But I've had a couple moments in this game where we needed to make a hit. And it came down to this, everybody's watching and the person bounces the die and it comes up bullseye and the table explodes. It was just amazing. And you also get really funny moments where people are like, rolling it off their nose, like, but beneath the table or whatever, because you can combine weapons. If you want to do like two separate weapons to really make your scores boosted, you can combine them and do like a bunch of different things at the same time. So just a lot of crazy fun, but also it does have that dungeon feeling where you're getting loot and you're getting more weapons and stuff like that. Just a blast, an absolute blast.
Yeah, this game is almost as entertaining to watch as it is to play. Hearing you talk about it, I'm just happy because I have so many fond memories of playing this game and watching people play this game. And I am really mad at myself that it's not on my list right now. So I couldn't agree more with you.
Wouldn't it be fun? I'm going to invent a trick-taking game right now. It's a trick-taking game, but you can only use your non-dominant hand, and you have to put out cards on the table, and one eye has to be closed the whole time. That's the only difference. It's a normal trick-taking game otherwise, but only that. Wouldn't that be great? Dungeon Fighter.
Does sound pretty good. Dungeon Fighter is a lovely, unique, silly game. I think it's also worth saying that there are 4 brand new editions of this coming out, which I'm hoping someone in our circle gets, because they all are adding like interesting new mechanics to the game, and it seems great. It seems like a smart way to handle that.
That is my number 44 favorite game of all time, Dungeon Fighter.
It's just like, I know you are like susceptible to this, Mark.
How's that?
Like, it's like, because there's that other
fun?
game where it's like...
I am susceptible fun, you're right.
There's that other game where it's like, put one hand on your nose and then keep playing and then
Yogi.
put one hand
Yogi.
table on... And it's like, and you're like, you have like this childish delight of like,
Yeah.
when you're explaining it to people, you're like, guess what we're about to do.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Perfect. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I'm full of childlike wonder.
Well,
There's
no,
one
but,
thing to say about me.
but this was an aside, so you can't put this in there.
My number 44th best game of all time is Letter Jam. What a weird novel idea this is. One of my favorite descriptions of this is actually Kellen's, which is as a niche of a niche of a niche, because it is a cooperative deduction word game. Who is that for? I couldn't tell you off the bat, but I know it's for me. The moments of brilliance that you experience playing Letter Jam, where you just find the perfect word that's going to be like, okay, I'm going to hit Kellen with this. I'm going to hit Christina with this. This word, you're going to know what your letters are, and it's going to be perfect. Because the aim of the game is that you don't know what your letter is at a given time, and based on the word that someone gives you, you have to try to deduce what that is. You're trying to do this for all the letters in your word, and once you do that, you rearrange them to get a word. If everyone solves their word, you've won. It's such an interesting, cool concept that I think doesn't succumb to some of the pressures of cooperative games where you feel like one person is running the table, because there is an incentive for everyone to contribute, and any given clue has to both be engineered by the person providing it and deciphered by everyone else at the table that it hits. So it does genuinely feel like a cooperative game that's firing on all cylinders, whilst being such a unique design. That is my number 44 game, Letter Jam.
This feels a lot like Decrypto to me in some ways, because I remember hearing about Letter Jam for the first time and hearing somebody try to describe how it works. And, once you play it, it makes perfect sense. Same with Decrypto, really. But, like, describing the game to people, you don't capture sort of the magic of how it works. This was another game that reminds me of a convention, this time 2019's Gen Con.
Yes.
Yeah, this was not a good memory because your sorry asses were having a great old time playing Letter Jam while I was getting us to not get kicked out of the building because we'd organized like a non-affiliated event and we did not have the room, and I was running around trying to help you, idiot.
You were terrified of the LARPers knocking on the door. Let's just finish playing. Why are you so scared?
All right. I think you guys are going to be excited about my 43rd favorite game of all time, and maybe a little surprised because it is a hidden trader game. If there's anything that you know about me, it is that I do not like hidden trader games. But I like this one. This is Battlestar Galactica. So a small caveat here, I love Battlestar Galactica, the show. So that helps keep this game, I suppose, on my top 50 list. There are a couple of things for me that make this better than other hidden trader games, specifically for the reasons that I don't like hidden trader games. One of those, and this is the reason a lot of people don't like it, is that this game is long. Like the Resistance you play in 10 minutes or whatever, and you're just like, the game is lying to your friends. And if you're bad at that, or you're bad at deduction, or you're bad at like one of the key elements of that game, it can be a really painful experience playing something like The Resistance, if any of those parts make you uncomfortable. Something that is much longer almost has like a more narrative effect. And again, it's partially because it is from a TV show, or it's using the characters from the TV show that everyone loves. But it feels less like lying to your friends the game. And I also think something that helps the whole you have to lie part is the Cylon impact, meaning that some people can start the game being good, and then it turns out they're a Cylon and they didn't even know they were a Cylon. And that forces people to be not 100% good, not to always play the good cards at the beginning. So it's a little bit easier to play as a bad character or as a Cylon because everybody's kind of playing that way in the beginning. So again, this is a very, very particular thing with my hangups with hidden trader games. And this Battlestar Galactica just happens to have particular solves for all of the things that I have trouble with in hidden trader games.
I would love to see BSG Redux, the streamlined version that was probably an hour shorter. I think that it does have the best system of card play that allows traders to participate but not be found out immediately. It solves the issue with the thing, Outposted Infection, whatever, 31, where we have to add a house rule to even make the game playable. Spectacular game, but too long for me.
I think that's exactly right for me too. Like, I love BSG, but I am more interested these days in trying to find something that will recapture the highs of what I remember from playing BSG.
That is my 43rd favorite game of all time, Battlestar Galactica, Misty. And now our 5th guest of the podcast, the Oreo tank. Misty,
all right.
Sit. Good girl.
My 43rd favorite board game of all time is one that we still have not played together, and I am remiss. That is Lords of Vegas. Lords of Vegas is a gambling game. It is a game that feels a lot like Monopoly. It has hung on my list for many years, having not played it, but it has slipped every time. I really need to get Lords of Vegas back out. It is a rollicking affair. It is a dice rolling game. It is a game where you take over casinos and you build out your casino. Neilan has a 3-casino thing over here, and then I try to make a better casino, and I connect them together, and one of us will take over. The way that the game makes you feel is unlike anything else. If Vegas sounds like something you might be interested in, I would encourage you to look at Lords of Vegas. I know an expansion for the base game was recently kickstarted, so there is still a lot of love for Lords of Vegas in 2020.
Yeah, this is a game that I desperately want to play. I feel like it'd be right up our alley, especially like going to other people's casinos and taking their money sounds like perfect.
Sounds like something we do in real life. So.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That is Lords of Vegas, my 43rd favorite board game.
My number 43 favorite game of all time is, I think, the biggest drop. This was 7th in 2018, 17th last year, and now it's all the way down to 43. This is Cuba Libre, and the reason it's dropped so much is because I'm trying to figure out when I'm going to be able to play it. It is a game that I love a lot about. It's crazy asymmetric, where you're playing Cuba doing the revolution, one person's playing the government, another person's playing the mobsters, and 2 other people are playing Castro's 26th of July faction, and another one's playing a student-led faction. So everybody has playing basically a different game, all on the same board, interacting, a lot of negotiation, a lot of crazy asymmetry. The game is rich in history, which is another thing I love. I love when games have a lot of history. And while it's one of the easier coin games, it is on the long side, and you generally want to have all 4 players. There must be 4 players, so you can play with a bot if there's less than 4. And I've heard the bot plays just fine, but it feels like it's going to be a tough sell. Whereas with 18XX, I'm confident that we're going to eventually play one. I think we'll eventually play a coin game, but I don't know the next time I'll be playing Cuba Libre. This year has taught me that I can play solo games. It's something I didn't think I'd be very interested in doing. So maybe my next play of Cuba Libre will be solo, but it's a system, it's a setting that I like, a lot of mechanics that I like, but dropping on my list because of the lack of plays. So my number 43 is Cuba Libre.
I feel like we could do a whole episode on how COVID has ruined board games.
Right.
Well, that'll be pleasant.
Well, no, but that's a mean way to say it. But like, honestly, like I think everyone's list has been affected by COVID.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
unquestionable.
Yeah,
For sure.
My number 43 game is Panic on Wall Street. This is a game where you have 2 sides playing parallel but different games. You have investors and bankers. The investors are buying shares from the bankers, spending money on them, and then watching as the stock market tumbles using dice. The bankers are doing everything in their power to sell those shares to those investors by competing with the other bankers. There's a real-time phase for this, which has the buying and selling across both teams, and it is so much fun. You're just shouting back and forth. You're tapping your board. You're sliding in front of them being like, no, don't buy Mark's thing, buy mine. And then someone's frantically selling off something in the distance and you don't notice it, and then you try to swipe it back. There's so many just like great emergent moments like that just happen in this pretty simple rule set. Like, the game is honestly a lot of chaos and just a lot of luck, but it's just such a fun experience. There will be 2 winners at the end of the game, one for the investors and one for the bankers. And I think it's just such a delight for how novel it is, frankly. That is Panic on Wall Street.
This narrowly missed my list. I really wanted it to be on my list.
Yeah, this was my number 51st game. This is the game that just missed the cut. In the same way that Nova Luna was the game of Dice Tower West, and in the same way that Letter Jam was the game of Gen Con 2019, the game of Shucks, for me, was our game with listeners of Panic on Wall Street. It was absolutely the best. We'll never forget it. Love this game. Absolutely love this game.
My only piece of advice is make sure you play this game at a circular table.
That's true.
It'll solve all the problems.
Someone needs to be sure to fact check Mark, as every game we've mentioned will be in the 50s somehow. I've almost made his list. But if we could have a hawk-eyed listener, hawk-eyed? No,
Yeah.
that
Hawk-eared.
hawk-eared
Hawk-eyed.
listener. Keep him on task. I would love you forever.
My 42nd favorite game of all time is Ethnos. So Ethnos is an area control and hand management game. There are 12 tribes that influence the area control placement in this game, but only 6 of them are randomly shuffled into each game. So this creates a really, really varied game. Every time you play, it's a little bit different. You're kind of discovering new tribe powers. Some of the tribes have little mini games that make each play more interesting. And some of the tribes are just breaking rules or influencing how you can increase your area control. So this is a game that is shorter than a lot of other area control games that we like. It feels really light, but it still has so many interesting elements in it that I just have not been able to get enough of it over the years.
I agree. I mean, my favorite thing, and there's a lot to like about Ethnos for sure, but I just love how fast this game moves. Like, it's draw a card and potentially play cards and then goes to the next person. And a number of times while playing Ethnos, like, I will have taken my action and I'm considering what to do next, and it's already my turn again. It's a game where, like, it just whips around the table, and I love that about it.
Yeah. So that is my 42nd favorite game of all time, Ethnos.
This is on the block list for I can't get rid of it because I tried previously.
He has tried to get rid of it, like basically every trade, and I will not get rid of this game.
My 42nd favorite game of all time is one that Mark brought up as falling off of his list. This is Bruges by Stefan Feld. All the reasons that Mark likes it, I like it. I think about my top 50 a little bit like if I could only have 50 games, this is what they would be. There may be some Dudes on a Map, People on a Plane, Meeples on a Map games that could go in a slot like this that aren't as good as my favorites, but I have so many of them. I love Bruges for multi-use cards. I love Bruges because it exemplifies a harsh, tight game where you still score points for everything. I've had a little bit of a failed year playing his games online and enjoying them. Bruges is not one that I pulled out, but I am eager to get Christina to play it, as I imagine it would make her top 50 list. The cards do add a little bit of luck to the game, so if you play with people or you're sensitive to luck, you may want to stay away, but I may also stay away from you. That is Bruges.
We have actually had like a standing date on the calendar that keeps moving to play this game with Daniel / Longtime Sunshine. And it's really sad because, I mean, it's kind of like Kellen said it right. This has been the failed year of postponing gameplays, and it's just sad.
And everyone loves Bruges. It's but we love it.
That's a quote.
Yep.
Kellen didn't make that up.
My 42nd favorite game of all time, to me, is the other game of Dice Tower West. I remember getting up early because this game was checked out of the library on a constant basis. It was always checked out. And then the very last day of the con, I got up early, staked my claim, and got us all to play The Crew. The Crew is a cooperative trick-taking game. It's one of those games where it combines a couple things that have been around forever, trick-taking and cooperative games, in a interesting way. You've got 50 different missions you can go on, which are things that you're trying to do in terms of making sure that one person plays their cards all out, or one person takes all the ones, or whatever. These trick-taking elements that you're doing in a cooperative way and all sort of doing together. But the further twist is that communication is very, very limited. I had a great time playing this game. This is a COVID victim for me. Yeah, COVID casualty. Perfect. Yes. This is a COVID casualty for me. This is a game that I imagine we would have played quite a bit more had it not been for that. Absolutely love this game. I remember our plays of it. I remember the tension and trying to diffuse the tension, and we're a team.
Remember
we're a team. That's right.
That's the pep talks between the games.
Yes,
we have to remind each other that we're not trying to attack each other.
Right.
Mark did something so dumb, and we were just like, Mark, we're a team.
Right.
How could you forget we're a team?
That's like online multiplayer games where you want to like flame the people you're playing with, but you actually, if you successfully flame them, then they just play worse, right? Because you've insulted them.
Right.
That's fantastic.
And to sort of piggyback on that memory of Christina's, I made a dumb move in this game, but you play so quickly and it's cooperative that it
doesn't matter.
Yeah, it didn't bother me at all. And we just played it again real quick. So that's a new entry on my list. Number 42, The Crew.
That's when Mark taught me not to take myself so seriously in games.
Right. You said, why so serious? And I said, why so serious?
Yeah, you said it perfectly. I love this game. I can't say it better than you, but hopefully I can later because I will be talking about it later.
Oh, nice. Perfect.
My 42nd best game of all time has moved up 5 spots. This is a game that was on my list in previous years, but I haven't actually played this in 4 years. But I've just played this for the first time in 4 years this past week and reminded myself how much I love it. This is Oracle of Delphi, another Feld game and one of only 2 Feld games on my list. Oracle of Delphi doesn't feel like I think you would imagine the typical Feld game. It is not at all a point salad-y type of game. It is a race game. You have ships that you start at Zeus. You are traveling around this map in whatever direction you please to complete 12 tasks which you've been assigned. You complete all of them in whatever order you please, and you get back to Zeus, and the first person to do that wins. It is a delightful puzzle of manipulating colored dice in order to move to specific locations of the map, load objects onto your ship, offload them into specific places, and do this via the most optimal route possible. One of the brilliant things about it is by the nature of the game's design, everyone's route will be slightly different. So everyone has a separate puzzle to solve, but you're still interacting with each other in this very profound way, because if someone steals something from you that's on your route, you have to find a way to work around that. And that happens a lot in Oracle of Delphi. This game is so clever and so smart, and I always have fun every time I played it. I'm glad I got this reminder this year of how good a game it is. That is the Oracle of Delphi.
If a race game has it so that every player is very close to winning the game at the same time, I would argue that it is in fact a point salad. Subject for another episode.
My 41st, closing out the episode. My 41st favorite game of all time is a game that left Neilan's list, but it did not leave my list. This is Air, Land, and Sea, and I actually had some of my favorite games with Neilan, so very sad.
I'm sad I did feel the same, Christina.
Yes, that you didn't feel the same. Okay, so Air, Land, and Sea is a game where there are 3 theaters. This is a 2-player game. You're battling your opponent, and you want control of 2 of the 3 theaters, and that is how you win around. The interesting thing about this game is, well, 2 interesting things. One, you are dealt a hand of cards, and you don't get to draw any more cards for that round. So you kind of look at your hand at the beginning, and you have to come up with a strategy based on what you have. So with your limited number of cards that, again, are changing every round, you're trying to figure out, okay, how can I combine these and which one do I play first? And you can either play them face up or face down. If they're face down, they only count for 2 points in terms of winning one of the theaters, but then you can play them to any of the theaters, whereas if you play them face up, they have to fit into their corresponding theater. So there are a lot of really interesting decisions. It is super tactical. You're trying to change your strategy on the fly constantly, and the other interesting thing to me is there is a key decision point where you have to decide if you want to withdraw. You have to decide, okay, I'm not going to win this round. I just withdraw, and it gives them less points as opposed to if they just win the round. This just has created so many quick, lightning fast, fun, fiery, tactical, interesting games between Neilan and I, and he does not agree.
I agree.
I'm just kidding. I love how tactical this is. I love how fast each round goes.
This is hovering below my list, and I think that you hit on what is, I think, the thing about Air, Land, and Sea that is brilliant, which is without the retreat consideration, it could just be a fairly staid, like, back and forth. But the consideration at any point of, like, can I win with the cards I have left in my hand? Do I just cut my losses, give the other player points, or do I risk giving them more points by sort of committing more to this? Is so key. It's what makes that game brilliant to me.
And that is Air, Land, and Sea, my 41st favorite game of all time.
Public service announcement. This was about the game Air, Land, and Sea and not the another game, Heroes of Air, Land, and Sea.
Which is garbage.
And which I think is called Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea.
Public service announcement over. My number 41st favorite board game of all time is the board game that cannot be killed. This is one of my biggest losers, actually, of the year, moving down my list from position 30 to 41. This is Splendor. Splendor is a lightning-fast, rock-solid game of collecting gems and upgrading. It uses really cool components. I love in Splendor the progression that you feel during the game, because you start the game and you're collecting chips, and then you have to spend those chips to get a ruby. But from now on, you always have one ruby. And that feels super great. When a card comes out that you can just buy without having to pay any of the chips, feels so great. It's a game that just exponentially scales as you get to the mid and end game. Splendor is a divisive game because a lot of people look at it and go, there's not enough game here, it's not good enough. And then there's a whole section of us who chant, you cannot kill Splendor. You just cannot do it. That is Splendor, my 41st favorite board game of all time.
And number one on my list for running things through your fingers.
That's number one. Wow, that's high praise. My 41st favorite game of all time was 43 in 2018, was 48 last year, but it's risen because I just played it with some family. This is Wyatt Earp. Wyatt Earp is one of the older games on my list. It is a rummy-style game where you're trying to get majorities in the different outlaws you're going after. I love a lot of things about Wyatt Earp. The simple rule set is one of them. I love hand management card games where the rule set is simple, but the decisions are always taxing. Like a lot of other games that I like, the tough decision here is which card to discard, because you have to discard a card after every turn, and that is a very difficult decision to make. It also has a weird, like, special power action where you can try to activate these characters, and the way that you determine whether or not you're successful is you flip a card, and if it has a bullet hole on it, then you've been successful. So there's like a weird sort of like player power random aspect to the game, which it doesn't influence the game that much. It's not like a swingy thing, but it's just a very unique thing to see in a rummy card game. I just love how smooth this plays, but how tough the decisions are. It's not as high pressure as some other hand management card games that I like, but for anybody who is familiar with rummy and playing out melds of cards, this is perfect, and I think a classic sort of game. So yeah, this is Wyatt Earp, my 41st favorite game of all time.
My 41st best game of all time has fallen a little bit, but it was my favorite game of 2019. This is Pipeline. Pipeline is a heavy economic game of creating a pipeline network with these tiles that have pipes connecting from one side to the other of multiple colors. So you're acquiring those tiles through various worker placement actions on the board, building your network of pipes that has to be of a specific length in order to purify oil towards different grades, which you then sell on the market depending on the quality and amount you're able to produce. You're eventually able to automate parts of this. There are these special techs that are unique to each game that are so absurdly powerful. But one of the craziest things about Pipeline is that the whole system can be so punishing, because you can get up to level 2 of the techs and be denied from getting any more techs depending on how other people play. But you are also able to get by without them. So they're just the right balance of being very enticing and seemingly very powerful, but not game-breaking. It feels like an extremely finely tuned game, but one that is quite heavy and quite long. And I think the reason it slipped ultimately is, given like multiple opportunities to buy it this year, I just didn't feel like a game I needed to have in my collection. And I couldn't quite put my finger on that. It could just be because I felt like I had played a bunch of it and I was losing a little bit of enthusiasm for it, but I still feel quite strongly about Pipeline, an excellent game from last year.
And I'm going to quickly carry us out of this episode because we are blazing overtime. Do you blaze overtime?
So one quick thing I wanted to mention before we go is that for the last year, one of the moderators in our Discord, W.A. Wilson, has been running what's called the contest, which is a challenge to see how long you can go without acquiring new board games. And I mention this because he's about to kick off next year's edition of the challenge, the Contest 2021. So you can take part in that as well as other little community events that are happening over in our Discord at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord.
Thank you so much for joining us for our first 50 through 41 favorite board games of all time. Thank you, as always, to Heart Society for their song, What's on Your Mind, Kid, from their album, Wake the Queens. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast, being a part of the Board Game Barrage journey in 2020. Thank you so much. We're so excited to continue the podcast and continue this list with you. Next episode, we will count down, I always get this wrong,
40
to 31. I know my numbers better than my alphabet. Thank you. And good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you and good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, dog. It's over for you. Come on. No.
Here, I'll get her.
Okay. Nope.
Oh.